Purdue unfortunately falls to UConn 75-60 on what was it, Monday night? I can't even remember
Yep.
anymore. It was so late
Monday
at
night.
night. I was,
Or Tuesday morning, something like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
basically Tuesday morning. So,
Yeah.
we can talk all day long about how national championship games shouldn't start at 9:30 at night on a Monday, but whatever. I'm sure everybody's already discussed that. Russ, man, we'll go to you first. Your thoughts on the game overall?
Yeah. So, I mean, it obviously didn't go the way we would have wanted it to as Purdue fans, but it honestly was, I mean, it was the greatest season we probably ever had, especially in our lifetimes. And yeah, Dylan, yeah, it's a sore subject. I think that was half the reason we didn't do a podcast last night. We usually go live every Tuesday, and I think people were just like, we need a break. It's been a long run. It's been a long season. It's a long season when you're, doing a podcast, you're following the team. So I can't imagine how long it was to them to go 3 extra weekends after everybody else is done. And I mean, transfer portal is already starting, coach talk is already starting, and we're like, hey, we still got 2 more games, hopefully 2 more games. But it was, I mean, they left it on the court. Edey did not, disappear. I know people can say, well, he's a one-man show, 37 out of 60 points, but we aren't there without Lance Jones. We aren't there without Braden Smith. We aren't there without, Fletch, TKR, Mason Gillis, those guys. Like it's still very much a team effort this last year with the Boilermakers, but it was great to see him there. I mean, it's a monkey off the back. We've made a Final Four, and the feeling in the fan base is very much that this won't be it for Painter. Painter's only 53, right? You've got Izzo still out there coaching at 69. Underwood, who's one of the, up and coming coaches in the Big Ten, he's 60. So Painter's still got a lot of great years ahead of him as long as he wants to keep doing it and doesn't decide, hey, I've made a Final Four, I'm going to retire after a year or two. But we've got a great class coming in next year. We're bringing back a lot of great pieces from this year's team. So it's really a sense of optimism, like disappointment, but a lot of optimism and thankfulness for how the season went, for sure.
And from a opposing, Big Ten school perspective, and it was funny just watching the two teams that gave Illinois the roughest goes all year were in the national championship. So it was really like we were feeling pretty good about our program with seeing the two teams that because only one team beat Illinois by double digits, which was UConn, but they beat everybody by double digits. So.
Yeah.
That's just how it went. And as much as we want to talk about the 30-0 run, I know, because that's what everybody gives me crap about. But just watching, Purdue, I was, pleased and happy to see, Edey go out playing like that, which was great. I think, Klingon did a pretty decent job on him, but, he got his points plenty, and it sounded like Hurley was okay with that. They just wanted to take everybody else away. Which by the way, easier said than done. Like Illinois tried that in the second one, and in the second half, Smith and Lawyer were hitting their shots. It was a shame, really. I was okay with a Big Ten championship. I think the conference needs to win one here in the next few years. So get all this Big Ten can't win the big one crap off of everybody's tongue, because that's what it seems to always be. So seeing Smith and Lawyer and some of the other guys Smith, not necessarily, but from deep, it just seemed like nothing, even Gillis was struggling, like Gillis always had those big threes throughout the year. It just didn't seem to be their night, sadly. And, UConn doing something that no other team has done in the last 16 years. So, you got to tip your hat. They were just a buzzsaw, man. And, I think that's just, at the end of the day, how I looked at UConn and Russ. I think you guys had a great chance to win the game, but I think that anybody who had UConn in their bracket was just kind of unlucky until you had to play, until you had to play them. It was just kind of like it was their year. They were the best team in the country. So I feel like if you played UConn, your season was ending in March Madness. So, but you guys have so much to be proud of. I will say, were you expecting Mason Gillis to hit the portal? Was that kind of not surprising to you? Because the Ethan Morton, to me from the outside, was not a shocker, because he really didn't get to play a lot, the second half of the season, or maybe towards the end. He just looked like he was just a guy that was, getting, garbage minutes or maybe foul trouble minutes. So what was the Mason Gillis transfer portal stuff? Does that surprise you?
Not really, especially when Ethan Morton did it first, but Purdue's in a scholarship situation where we were one over the limit going into next season, and that's without Ethan Morton, without Mason Gillis, without Edey using a COVID year. So we weren't expecting them back. I think it was a bit of a shock that they went transfer portal, but I'm happy for them as long as they don't go play for Illinois or Indiana or somebody that we're gonna have to face this next year. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I wasn't surprised by Ethan Morton. I actually thought maybe Caleb First might have entered the transfer portal as well, but Mason Gillis did surprise me.
I was about to say there's still time, JR.
Well, yeah, I guess
something's going to have to give. Like I said, we're over the limit by one, so a freshman's going to have to decide. An incoming freshman's going to have to go to prep school, or one of these guys is going to have to give up a scholarship, or somebody's going to have to transfer that is an underclassman or not a senior going into next year. So.
Philip asked, first going portaling. I wasn't saying he is. I was just saying if it was like I knew one person from Purdue was going to have to, so my thought was maybe First or Morton. I guess like these guys said, he still could potentially go portaling, but I'm not necessarily predicting that to happen. Okay, let's talk about Twitter because Twitter's dumb. Okay, Zach Edey had a fantastic game. End of story. Zach Edey is the best player in college basketball this year. Terrence Shannon Jr. is number 2, and Dalton Connect is number 3. All right, end of story. Zach Edey played like the best player in college basketball this year, and he had a fantastic game. Unfortunately for him, Fletcher Lawyer and Lance Jones didn't have the game that you would like them to have. Braden Smith, I think, had a good game. It wasn't great, but it was a good game. I think he did what he had to do for the team to win, and unfortunately, when you just don't get the production from Fletch and Lance, and Cam Heidi had a dunk that will rock everybody's TV screens for...
I wasn't even sure it went in live. Like when it happened live, I was like, did that go through the hoop? Did that really holy?
I didn't know Cam Heidi had that in him, dude.
He's had some crazy above the rim plays this year. So it didn't, I knew he had it in him, but it just kind of came out of nowhere. It's like, sometimes he makes a play like that and you're like, oh, I didn't see him get subbed in. That's crazy.
How's Purdue's class next year? I've seen they've got, I think a couple 4-stars, right?
Yes, we've got
6 guys committed, right?
And I think there's 3 that have a really good shot at contributing at a pretty high level. 1 or 2, Kanan Catchings or Jakari Harris could actually start for us possibly. So we're reloading pretty well next year. Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's
Kaufman, Wren.
Yep.
Kaufman, Wren, Fletch, Braden Smith.
Yep.
Who are the other 2 you think is
Cam Heidi, Miles Colvin? Oh,
yep.
As far as yeah. But I thought you were talking about incoming freshmen, like the recruiting class.
Yeah.
I was asking, you said 2 of those guys could have been starting. And so I was listing off the for sure starters.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'd say the 3 that started this year that are coming back for sure. And then I think Cam and Miles will challenge for a starting spot, but I think Jacobson, Harris, and Catchings could all be in the mix for a starting spot as well. It just kind of depends on what goes on. And if anybody else transfers, going into this summer, we'll see what happens. So
very cool. Very cool. Russ, going back to Zach Edey, so 0 assists in this game. I heard some chatter about it, like maybe he could have done a little bit better passing in this one. I mean, Cam Spencer was doubling him at times, but I still felt like there wasn't really anything Edey could do because the rotations, literally UConn, it was like all their guys had ropes around their waist and they were just moving as one unit the entire time. It was incredibly impressive the way they were able to rotate on the perimeter. And even when Edey had some possibly open passes across the court, it still felt like they were in good enough position that they weren't exactly open and you weren't going to get a good shot from that. So, in your opinion, Russ, do you feel like Zach Edey could have passed a little bit better, or do you not really put any fault on Zach Edey and say the dude scored 37 points. He did what he had to do.
Yeah, not really. The way they doubled was different than what some other teams double. When NC State was doubling, the natural thing is to just wall up 2 dudes in front of Edey and make him shoot over you, right? But the way that especially Cam Spencer was doubling was he was kind of almost flashing back and forth, like going in and taking a swipe and then getting back to his guy, going and taking a swipe, getting back to his guy. And a lot of times he either would get a steal or cause a turnover, or he would get called for a foul. So it wasn't like it wasn't a doubling like we've seen a lot this year, a ton this year. And they did an amazing job of rotating back to shooters to the point that in the first half, the 3-pointer that Mason Gillis attempted, he didn't even get to the rim because he got stuffed because they were that on top of our shooters. And I think they didn't even count it. At halftime, they were talking about Purdue only attempted 2 3-pointers, where they were being nice to Mason Gillis because they didn't count his as an attempt when they were talking about it at halftime. But they were just on us from 3. And Edey, that's the game plan that Michigan State's used against us the last few years, right? That's why Edey's averaged 30+ points against Izzo and Michigan State, because they let Edey get his and stop everybody else. The thing is, Edey usually shoots a little bit better, and we still have some openings. We find openings for 3-point shooters because he just missed a few that he could have made. Like, he still shot on his average. I think he was like 62 or 63% in the game, but there was still 2 or 3 that he should have made, and he was mad at himself for missing that. If he makes those, it might change the dynamic of the way UConn played him. They might have to double a little bit harder, and it opens things up a little bit more for shooters. And then we had several misses like that somehow we'd miss at the rim, and then UConn gets a run out layup somehow. Like, they were just transitioning very well. And it wasn't, this is where I might get into some of the Twitter interesting things too after that weren't just about Edey, that people just chirping, like Illinois fans, Tennessee fans, people chirping about, oh, see, you really weren't the bestie. Oh, you just got lucky because you didn't play UConn to the final game. And really, the only difference is UConn didn't shoot as good from 3 against you as they did against Illinois. That's the only difference. And it's like, no, it was a completely different game. Like, they didn't go on a 30-0 run. The biggest point stretch they had, I think, was like 8 points from the first half to the second half. It was just like they'd score 4, we'd hit a bucket. They'd score 5, we'd hit a bucket. They'd score, it was just it was a slowly methodical them pulling away from us, and we just couldn't get them to stop hitting shots. And that's, I think, why the UConn team was so hard to beat this year, was they never went cold. It seemed like they always had somebody, and a lot of times they were difficult shots. They hit some runners, they hit some contested threes in that game that you're just like, man, there's no way they can keep hitting those, but they just kept scoring the ball.
I mean, the game against Alabama was a good example too. It seemed like kind of similar games a little bit. It was like you guys were close. Alabama, I think, maybe even played them the best out of anybody. I thought for a while there, Alabama could have, for a minute, I'm thinking, can they do it? And then of course they do the UConn pull away, ended up winning by 14. But, I think Edey's got nothing to put his head down about. And I know I felt bad for him though, because they got Dave Revson and all these guys shoving mics in their face, right after the game. And like, so how does it feel right now? Like, tell us, it's like, what do you think? I mean,
bad.
Like, let's see, deflated, I mean, and Russ, I just want you to know, I was 18, but I remember vividly Illinois losing to North Carolina in the national championship game. I know how it feels. Okay. So, and as much as somebody's like, oh, blah, blah, we don't want to hear it. It's true though. When you get, and you're an Ohio State fan, JR, when they had Conley and Oden,
I hate Florida.
It's like you get
Al
there,
Horford.
you're this close to that.
My dreams.
You're this close to ecstasy,
Yeah.
And then it just, I know how it feels. So much to be proud of, though. I mean, and I can't believe people are even talking about Painter could be done. Russ, is that something people are actually saying?
I think I saw it once randomly, and I don't think it was even a non-Purdue fan. I think it was a Purdue fan that talked about, maybe he decides he's had enough and retires or something. But it was no legitimate source. Nothing I think is actually happening. But it's no, I don't think so. I don't think he's done. I think that the 2026 Final Four is in Indianapolis. That'd be a heck of a Final Four to get back to, and maybe bring another Big Ten team or two and just kind of have the Big Ten take over a Indianapolis Final Four. That'd be pretty awesome. But
what's crazy is that he was this close to going to Missouri, about 9 years ago? Wasn't that what it was?
Who knows how close that was? I don't know. I'm not as, close to the issue, and, there's things that happen behind closed doors that who knows what happens, but we were definitely close to, and he actually mentioned it kind of in the lead up to this Final Four, that having that baby boiler recruiting class where he had the first 2 or 3 good years, if he didn't have that, when he had that year where we finished last in the Big Ten, he might have got run out of town. He might have gone, to a Missouri or somewhere else. That if it wasn't for that class, and that's why he made sure to thank Robbie Hummel and that class when we made the Final Four after beating Tennessee. He was like, look, every class and everything we've done to this point since he's been at Purdue led to this.